Welcome, sentient beings from all known universes and beyond. It's time to activate your cranial downlinks and prepare to receive a raft of discussion on a cosmic ocean of science fiction and fantasy topics, interviews with local area genre devotees, and insightful prognostication by our soothsayers of science fiction, our forecasters of fantasy, and any other beings that happen to get caught in our gravity well. This is the Galactic Driftwood Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Galactic Driftwood Podcast. I'm Bill.
I'm John.
It's Charles.
I'm Seth.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Katie.
And today we're going to, yes, we have a special guest, Katie, with us this week. She's been on once or twice before, I think, right?
You've heard her laughing in the background at our shenanigans.
Yes, many times, right. So anyway, we're going to be spending a lot of the show today talking about Lovecraft Country. But before we get started, Seth.
This week in Nerd News.
We figured that was a kind of a fun way to do that opening. So we want to talk about some of the stuff that's going on that fellow nerds might be interested in. I think one of the big things was this week, September 8th, Wednesday, was Star Trek Day. September 8th, 1966 being the day that Star Trek first aired the original series. And so now they've kind of got Star Trek Day happens on the anniversary of that date every year. And so this year, CBS All Access sponsored a day of free Trek. They were airing certain episodes of Star Trek on, if you went to the StarTrek.com website, you could stream it. And then they stopped at noon Pacific time, which was 2 o'clock our time, for a series of panels, hour-long panels, featuring cast members from all of the different shows, which was very cool. And then they also, when they did the Discovery panel, they released a new trailer for Star Trek Discovery, which had some interesting things in it. One is that we saw the Discovery itself had crash landed on a planet.
Never good for a spaceship.
Never good for a spaceship, especially a starship, which are normally not designed to land on planets. But we have seen it with inside of a cave. So,
well, I mean, crashing isn't good for any ship, I guess.
No, this is true. This is true. And then one of the other things that was mentioned was Burnham was asking one of the other characters, a new character, whose name I can't recall right now, but she asked him, what happened to the Federation? And his reply was, the Federation collapsed after the burn. And she looks at him and she's like, what is the burn? And he's like, that's the day the galaxy took a hard left. So it'll be interesting to see what that means and how that all plays out. But Star Trek Discovery starts streaming on October 15th. So just over a month, a couple days over a month away.
So like what's the burn? And he's just like, fucking Trump.
That's very possible. You know, I would have actually thought that if he would have said that's the day the galaxy took a hard right, then I would have been
that's the thing. That was the day that they decided to take everybody's phasers away.
Maybe. So I think that'll be pretty interesting. And then a couple of the other things. So the series Away has started airing on Netflix, and I just finished watching that. It was interesting. Yeah, it's a little slow, as John said. John he got into 20 minutes of it and couldn't do any more, right?
Yeah, the pace was, I couldn't get invested in what kind of conspiracy theory they're trying to lay down about some accidents. And
yeah, there was an accident on their way to the moon. There was a fire broke out on the spaceship, and the way it got resolved, led the other crew to doubt the capabilities of the female commander, mission
That's right.
commander, who is played by Hilary Swank. She plays Commander Emma Green. And
You know
so
what?
it's,
I
what's
did
that?
a John. I watched part of that first episode too,
Oh, yeah.
or maybe into the second, but I couldn't. I finally decided it wasn't worth.
Yeah, I watched it just so I could get through it and watch the whole thing, and it ends up being kind of light on the science fiction and space stuff, and it's more about family drama.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I would agree with that only because I haven't watched it yet, but I was in a group chat with my family and my dad watched it all. That was pretty close to how he had described it.
Right.
I want
And my
family
sister
drama. I've
actually
got
stopped
lost in
watching it.
space. Oops, sorry, Chris.
She started it and then she quit because she said it was too slow. It wasn't sci-fi enough for her.
Right.
And the way my dad gave the feedback was that it was about family and certain particular relationship models and things like that. So that is telling it. You have that exact same feedback. That
Yeah.
I don't know why you would send why you'd send a mother or a father to Mars. I mean, the first Mars mission probably isn't coming back. Literally, it's going to be a one-way trip. That's the most optimistic projected plans, anyway. But it's like, yeah,
that
there's-
image that
Sorry, there's on the screen now is Commander Emma Green, and then her husband, who also works for NASA. He was supposed to, I guess, originally lead the Mars mission, but then he has some sort of medical genetic condition that predisposes him to having strokes or blacking out or whatever.
yeah, that image doesn't actually make me want to watch the show any.
No, and sorry, I think, John, were you saying something?
But it sums it up.
I'm just saying that it's like it's a lot of the projected missions to Mars, the first missions, involve one-way trips where the people literally live there for the rest of their lives. So they're not coming back. I think it's going to be extremely dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how it's going to be anything but extremely dangerous.
Yeah, and they do show that a little bit, but it's really light on the science fiction portion of it. I found myself, struggling to get through the family relationship dramas.
Exactly, because it keeps coming back up, and if it keeps coming back up that often, her mind's not on what she's doing.
No,
and, it's like shit.
And then the other turnoff for me is that I think every episode, I can't think of an episode where they didn't in some way try to shove religion at you. And they've got one of the characters on the ship, Quasi. He's highly religious. He's got the Torah with him on the ship, and he's always, getting people together for a prayer group. Now, I will say that it's not his idea. Someone on the crew will say, Quasi, should we do a prayer? So yeah, right.
So
they
just
do,
God can't hear
a
us here.
Lifetime series in space then?
it sounds
You
like
think
it.
that
Yeah,
Lifetime
yeah.
traditional TV shows. and
Yeah,
movies
it is. That's a good way to look at it.
Five
Yeah,
hours of it.
I would agree with that.
If I were to watch this, I would be looking back fondly on Hilary Swank's last role as an astronaut, The Core.
Yes, right.
Ah,
Yeah. And they've
A
got
fantastic movie. We should all watch more.
we should. And then they've got a relationship between Hilary Swank's daughter, Alexis, and this kid that she met, who on their first date, he has a surprise for her. He wants to take her out on a surprise date. So she sneaks out of her house without letting her dad know, and meets this kid who she's not been out with before. She's talked to on the phone and seen him at school. And they get in a car, and he's taking her to a surprise to show her something, to surprise her with something. Won't tell her what it is. And of course, in your mind, you're getting all these, oh God, is this guy going to be a psycho and rape her? No, he is a psycho. He's taking her to midnight mass for their first date.
Man.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. So Yeah, it's weird, but there's that in pretty much every episode, that type of thing. So
All right.
wasn't big on it. And then The Boys is out. I haven't started watching that yet, but John, you have. Has anyone else?
It
started?
is
Yes.
Katie, you
every
watched
bit
it?
as gruesome as you want it to be.
Yeah, it's a little dark.
Well,
All
a
right.
little dark.
A little dark.
A little dark.
Well, I'm just saying I've had to I've had, in order to go to sleep, I've had to switch away from it.
Oh, really?
The ocean is a little bit wet.
Yeah.
I had to switch over to the Karate Kids so I could go to sleep.
And this is on Prime, right?
Yeah. Amazon Instant.
Yep.
It is. It's very good.
Yeah. Season 1 was rather dark, so you're saying this is darker than season 1?
Well, it's just yeah. Well,
More the same.
I should probably go back and rewatch season 1 actually, but yeah, it just there's no let up from the darkness, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's like the people who are sliding into insanity have arrived. I think.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Well,
Yeah.
I knew when season 1 ended with Homelander using his X-ray vision to melt the skull of the leader of
The woman he supposedly loved.
right.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, yeah.
The one person who had any sort of controls over him.
Right. Right.
At that point, you know he was unchained.
Yeah, right.
Oh, no, you don't. All right. I'm not going to spoil it. You guys, you get to watch it unfettered, but it's like he's even more unbalanced this time.
Huh. That'll be fun to watch.
I'll say Homelander is a terrible father.
Oh yeah, all right. If you want, yeah, that is a very truthful statement. You will see that Homelander is a terrible father. It's like,
All right. Well, we'll have to cycle back to this on one of our next podcasts.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah. And then the last new show that's out, Raised by Wolves, also on HBO Max. Really good show. I'm 3 episodes in, but it's really good. The cinematography, the story, it's very engaging, and you're wondering how it's all going to play out. And just when you think you know what's going on, something will happen, and you'll be like, wait, what did that guy just say? Did he say what I fucking think he said? You know, and yeah, he did. So
Yeah,
it's
he
really
said
good.
that. He said that thing.
He said that, and that just kind of changes your whole perspective on everything. So yeah, so I like it. So I heartily recommend it. Okay, so let's jump into Lovecraft Country, and I'll give a fair warning right now in that I frequently fall back to calling it Cthulhu Country for some reason. I think John did that to me, like he did Sean for Seth.
I did.
I don't know when, but I'm sure you did.
Well, I'm going to give a warning in that we're going to be talking about some racist shit here.
Yes.
We are a
And
bit.
Yeah.
most of us are just about as white as you can get. So
Yeah, especially with my white hair now. Used to not be quite that bad, but so and that's kind of one of the main reasons Katie's joining us this time.
no. The
Well-
racism is not like Katie pointing it.
No.
Praise for context.
God
Yes.
damn it, Bill.
Katie is not a racist. She's here to talk about Lovecraft's racist leanings. So
That's a perfect
And his
audio bite
stories.
there. Katie is not a racist.
at least that's our perception.
Oh,
Is that the title of the show?
What's that, John?
Is that the title of this week's
Katie
show?
is not a racist.
Yeah.
I'm not naming it that. I
Please don't.
don't want to be in that kind of trouble. Thank you very much.
All right. So, Lovecraft Country. So for those that haven't seen it, just basically I'll tell you. So the series is about a young black man who travels across the segregated 1950s United States in search of his missing father, learning of dark secrets plaguing a town on which famous horror writer H.P. Lovecraft supposedly based the location of many of his fictional tales. And so I know, Chris, you've seen the first 4 episodes. I've seen the first 3. How
4
about
episodes is all that's out at this point.
right?
Yeah.
And so, Katie, you've seen the first 4,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
Seth,
As have I.
and Charles, you haven't seen it.
Oh,
Have you?
yeah, I have.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Are you full through season 4? Or I mean,
So
episode 4.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And John, you have not seen it yet.
No, I've seen it all. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
We've all
Awesome.
seen it.
Sweet. So I think everybody's ahead of me then because I'm only through episode 3. But anyway, so what are your thoughts? Let's start with Chris and ask him what he thinks.
Yeah, so I think it's been really, really good from the unique perspective of blacks going through this sci-fi type of horror adventure, and I'll go ahead and jump into something that was prominent for me, which is Charles, you linked to an interview or a reading by Matt Ruff a couple of years ago, and he brought up something early on in that conversation which was interesting in what he was trying to portray, and one of the quotes in there is more or less, when you're black, there's always monsters in America. It's not just, he says, your elder gods from beyond time and space. It's sometimes the police or the Ku Klux Klan or the registered voters. And I think that's this Lovecraft Country does a good job of depicting these characters, Atticus being, the war veteran and the main character here going through, and these people that join him. The monsters that they're facing in this series aren't just your typical monsters in the closet or under the bed or anything like that. It's the people that they also have to deal with in their struggles. So I think it's a great show. I think it covers a whole lot from what they're trying to get a message across from in terms of the racism and also things going on in sci-fi and horror. So I'm loving it so far. 10 out of 10 stars.
Yeah, for me, the watching the first 2 episodes, it was the most horrifying part to me was the racism part of it.
Yeah.
The diner scene, first episode.
What's that?
The diner scene.
Yes.
Going in thinking you're just going to grab lunch and
right.
George is this. George plays Atticus's uncle.
Yeah.
And he does these travel guides, safe travel guides for blacks. Where can you get food? Where can you travel and things like that? Yeah. So that's George.
There's the diner scene. Yeah.
Yep. And they stop here thinking, hey, we're stopping to get a bite to eat before we continue going on. And, shit hits the fan kind of thing.
Well,
And,
one of them notices that the building is constructed in a certain way.
It's been painted white,
Mhm.
and the floors were all covered up to cover up the burn marks or whatever. The place has clearly been burnt up before. And you get your first glimpse at these what it was like to live in some of these places where they were termed sundown counties or sundown states and whatnot. And it's terrifying. Your first terrifying moment is not a monster, but
right,
it sort of is.
And that was new to me because I was not familiar with the term sundown towns or sundown counties before. And when I saw that in there, I'm like, is that something that was that real? And I looked that up just to find out about it. And it's just horrifying.
Yeah, all the way up until maybe even the early 1960s. And to be clear, this wasn't just southern states. There were northern states, all the way,
Yeah.
Jersey even being included. There are some northern states who are also included in this. So to get a clearer picture, this is not just something that happened in the South. This was everywhere.
And it didn't really happen all that long ago either.
No, you're talking last 60 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are people that are running our nation that were born into this as a normal thing.
Yeah.
Think about that. The average age of the people in Congress were alive or raised in this type of environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When I was watching the show, I was thinking, my grandpa is about the same age as Atticus. And, my grandpa's still alive. So.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. The show is just so good, but watching this level of racism is probably the worst part for me.
And I think I I appreciate it all that much more for them giving a realism to what people experience, because a lot of this is in literature today. It's not portrayed on the screen like it is now, especially not in something that's a popular sci-fi / horror show that's put out there today. They usually steer away from these types of themes, and that's what I enjoyed about what Matt Ruff has done here in that quote I brought up about that. Blacks during this time, their monsters weren't just monsters; they're also the people they have to deal with. And he does a really good job at depicting, they're just trying to go from point A to point B, and more than half of their adventure is not worrying about the monsters in the trees. It's, am I going to get pulled over by a state trooper before the sun hits before the sun goes down?
Well, and not even knowing that you're in a sundown county, and then having a racist cop stop you, and when they're outside the vehicle and they're out in the middle of nowhere virtually, right? And then the state trooper comes over the ridge and starts pulling up slowly on them. And, I just immediately got this sense of dread, and what they're feeling in their heart when they see this. They're like, oh, what's going to happen to us?
Well, yeah. I mean, the characters do an excellent job of portraying that fear too. It's like one of the things about horror is like what really it scares you in a horror story or a movie is like that sense of powerlessness. And all these characters know that they're powerless in these situations.
I remember when I reflected on the first episode, and it's sort of, in a way it's funny, but one of the horrible parts is when the actual evil monsters show up, there's a relief.
Yes, right, right.
I did.
Right.
At least they could fight those.
I was rooting for the evil monster. They did. They killed the state troopers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for a character like Atticus, what does it matter whether you're facing a racist sheriff or a magician who's also racist? I mean, they both have power that you don't have.
So talking about that first monster encounter, so I'm also reading the book Lovecraft Country, and there are similarities and differences. Obviously, that happens with every work. But in that scene, you don't actually see the monsters in the book. It's assumed that they are Shoggoths, which in the Lovecraft mythos are essentially beings that were created as a slave race for the elder things, which is from At the Mountains of Madness. So in the book, the Shoggoths don't, you don't see them, but also they do not attack Atticus and his group at all. Like they just go after the sheriff and his deputies. And so there's an affinity there.
So do they
see.
So do they explain that in the book? Is that because they don't attack Atticus and his group because of his bloodline?
No, they don't explain it at all. But before that, there's some conversation about Shoggoths and how that they, Shoggoths were, slaves. And there's some language in the book that I'm not going to repeat here that's kind of a mashup. You can probably think about it. But.
Sure. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah, there's language from the show that we're not going to repeat here either.
Right. Yeah, so now that scene there that's Linda has on the screen, that's from the very opening scene of the series, and it's when Atticus, which they also call him Tick, that's his abbreviated abbreviated name. He's like dreaming, and he loves reading adventure stories, science fiction adventure stories, fantasy stories, and so he's having this dream where all these adventure stories that he's read are showing up in this one dream. So you've got these Lovecraftian monsters along with UFOs and Bigfoot and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's kind of funny. Yeah, I thought it was pretty good, and like everyone else, I was happy to see the monsters attack the cops, because they were so racist, and they did a good job of portraying that. The officer that came over the ridge, he explains to them that they need to be out of the country by sundown, or he's going to lynch him, essentially, right? And so then Atticus, who's very intelligent, he says, well, if we head south or whatever, or north or whatever, we can get out of town in time. No, you're not going to make it going that way. Well, what if we head south or whatever? Yeah, there's the racist officer. And so finally he picks a direction, and the officer says, yeah, you might just make it. You got like 9 minutes. You might just make it. And then they get in the car, and then Atticus thinks, oh, wait a second. If I got to go that way, I've got to make a U-turn and go back to that last road to head north or south or whatever it was. And so he asked the officer, would I be able to make a U-turn here? And, you could just tell at that point,
right,
the officer was waiting for him to make a U-turn without asking, so he'd have an excuse to arrest him. And you're like, God, that fucker, because he says, well, aren't you the smart one? Except I don't think he says
yeah,
that.
and that's the life that they're living is from that point on, anything he says or does, he realizes that cop is just looking for an excuse. So
yes,
I'm going to play out what my next 2 or 3 moves is and ask the officer, is this okay, before I do it.
Right.
And that's scary in itself.
You can also tell that the officer was getting off on the power trip.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
He was
definitely.
enjoying the whole thing. And he was going to get away with it. And that's the thing. Who was going to punish him?
Yeah, nobody.
Well, a bunch of Shoggoths, it turns out. Spoiler warning.
Right.
I think that one lived, though.
Well, that one
No.
did, but the other
He got
officers on the other
bit.
side.
He got bit and became one, it looked
That's
like.
right.
Not that one. I thought.
Yeah, he
drove
did.
away from. He was part of that power.
Yeah, but he came back. So he basically followed them after they said, well, if we head north or south or whatever, we got 9 minutes, we can get to the next county and be safe. So he basically followed them because the speed limit was like 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, so
And
he couldn't
so
exceed the speed limit.
Right. So they've got to be
remember
sure that they're not exceeding. And then, of course, he's ramming their bumper the whole time,
Yeah.
right?
I remember that, but it's
Yeah.
like he.
So then they get to the so
county
then
and he stopped.
he did. He stopped. They went over the railroad tracks into the next county. They were safe. The sun set. But as they come over the next little ridge there's like 3 or 4 state
There's 4.
patrol from that county.
Those are
Yeah, and I
different.
thought it was those 4 that got bit. It wasn't the original cop who
No,
stopped.
I think
It
he was.
not the
No.
original cut.
I'm
original
pretty sure he
cop-
was there and joined those.
I am absolutely positive he was not, but
He was.
because I was looking for him because I wanted to see him get bit really bad. I did, but
Maybe Linda can look for that in the background. See if you can find a picture of him, Linda, where he's where they're holding him hostage in the forest.
Well, so we were talking about this before, and the opening scene shows a bunch of these stories that Tick likes to read mashed together.
Yeah.
And so after that opens, he's talking to. Was that Letitia who was on the bus with him?
No.
No.
just another
Just another woman.
black
Yeah.
passenger on the bus.
Yep.
So they have to walk into town when the bus breaks down, and he's explaining about the books he reads to her, and they have a conversation about how he can enjoy these books whose authors were so racist and had racist themes in them, and that kind of comes down to being able to enjoy the story yet remain critical of it and the people who created it, which kind of leads us into Lovecraft himself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, keep in mind, you just mentioned that they had to walk into town. Did anyone else in that bus have to walk into town?
no.
No, they all got a ride in a pickup, and you could tell they weren't even going to ask if they could jump in the back of that pickup because
No.
you could tell that would have been a huge mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of sets the stage as to right early on what time period this is in, and they kind of go from there. So
Yeah, and he was coming into Chicago at that time.
Yeah. Yep.
That wasn't deep south. That was Chicago. That was Midwest.
Yeah, because I think in the very beginning, and I think this is actually in some of the reading with the I think in the first couple chapters of the book that you're reading, Katie, there's like a feeling of relief when they pass through this state line or something like that. So I think if I remember correctly in the show, they turn around and like flip the sign off or something like that, or they're like, "Good riddance, we're past here" or whatever. But then even then, they get past that line, bus breaks down, and they're still on their own. There's no help to get back to the rest of town or anything like that. You gotta haul your luggage and walk the rest of the way, and it's just like, so it's not just the South. Mm-hmm. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it plays out a little bit differently in the book. He's not on a bus, he's actually driving his car, and his, tire breaks down, and he can't actually call any of the local repair places for help because they won't help him. So he has to call a company in Indianapolis, which is like a 70-minute drive away, to come and help him. So
yeah, everything obviously adapted to the screen, but the message there still ends up being the same. But yeah, I want to talk about real quick a powerful moment. So we talked a little bit earlier about how all these characters experiencing horror all the time from all aspects, right? From the people that they have to see every day to the actual monsters or sorcerers that they end up having to face. In episode like 2 or 3, I think it's 3. There's an awesome moment where Letty, who is Tick's childhood friend that he grew up with, has had it, right? She just bought this house. They moved in a bunch of people. They're having a party one night, and throughout the past day or two, they've been harassed by the neighbors, right? This is a white neighborhood. You can't be here, kind of thing. And so they lined up a bunch of their cars. The neighbors did, and strapped bricks to the steering wheel, laying on the horn. So for constant days and hours, it was just a blaring horn. And it kind of boils over at the point where at some point during the night, those neighbors stand up across and light it on fire in front of the house. And they flash the Letty here, and then she gives a Tick a look, and then she just walks outside, grabs this bat, and there's this powerful moment where she's taking this bat. She goes out there, beats the crap out of the cars, and just, to me, it's a really powerful moment. And she knows she's going to get in trouble for this, but it doesn't matter at this point. She's had it. She's done with it. And I appreciated that they had that scene in there because, these characters are going through so much. And then, you can see where when it boils over, they're like, we're done. We're not having it. And it's kind of cool because all the other black men stuff or the shotguns didn't bother to help, but, they're keeping guard or whatever while she's out there just beating the crap out of the cars. So I really enjoyed that. And then obviously, as you can imagine, punishment came after that when the police arrived ever so quickly after that started.
Mm-hmm. And everyone got down on the ground on their knees with their hands behind their heads before the cops had showed up.
Yeah, it was amazing how fast the police showed up at that moment.
Yeah.
And then of course the whole trip to the police station with Letty in the back of the van, so she's handcuffed.
That reminded me a great deal of the Freddie Gray incident.
Yeah, that rang a bell with me on that.
Yeah.
Like who was beaten by the police but didn't survive the trip to the hospital because of the riot, I guess. And it's like damn. It's like that's it right there. It's like he's watching this lady just bouncing around the cab of the van. It's like wicked.
Did anyone read any of the we have another guest on the show.
Yes,
I did kind of the racism was very well done.
I don't know if that's let's not put that quote to your name.
No, but it's accurate.
The racism was well done.
The racism was well done in terms of how it illustrates racism to a group of people that racism is invisible to. Mm-hmm. But it's like there's it was everywhere, and it's like I didn't find the horrifying parts to be horrifying anymore. It's like the scariest parts for me was the racism. It's like I was almost like Charles said, I was almost relieved when the monster showed, because the monsters in a very big way were equalized the relationships. Everyone was in danger.
Yeah,
and it's like it was a strange experience to see that.
Yeah, the actual monsters actually didn't have any discrimination towards who they were.
They did not. They did not care. Except in the forest, they almost seemed to discriminate against the police officers. I was all in favor of it.
A little bit.
Okay. Here, I found the evidence. Can you see that?
Yep.
Picture? So that's where he's pulled them over. The racist cop has pulled them over in the forest and told them
to obsessing about
to get out.
Have you just this has been kicking around your head and you just can't let it go?
I can't. All right. So now here is the other image. So this next image that I'm going to share is from the scene where the cops all have Tick and his associates on the ground at shotgun point. Can you see it?
Oh, so they did show up there. Okay.
Yeah,
that had just been part of the other group that they ran across after they crossed the border.
Yeah, so there he was leading him into a trap.
Yeah, he was, and so what happens to him is really good, because he gets his arm ripped off, and then we find out that these creatures that attacked him are similar to vampires in the way that if you get their bite, you become infected, and eventually you turn into one of them in a particularly gruesome scene. And so I think that was just desserts. So somewhere that guy as a Shoggoth is still running around the forest.
That kind of thing has nothing to do with Lovecraft's monsters. That is something they just completely made up.
Did that happen in the book?
No, none of that happened in the book. Like I said, in that scene, they don't actually see the monsters.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right.
Well,
but they didn't kill any.
So nobody turns into a Lovecraftian monster in the books.
No one turns into a Shoggoth. That's not actually how Shoggoths work.
Okay. So they're taking little liberties with the story here.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, that always happens with book to screen. So
yeah.
Right.
I mean, the book and the show are obviously using Lovecraft and the stories as not Lovecraft came up with the world and was writing about the world, but he was there are just similar monsters.
Yeah.
Like during that scene, they were talking about Dracula, and George was like remembering Dracula and quoting it, and then I think Tick was like, yeah, what happens when a vampire bites somebody? So that was kind of showing how their reading kind of equips them for survival.
Katie, do you think that Lovecraft would approve of the way racism was portrayed here? Because to me it seems that racism was actually it horrified me, and I always thought of Lovecraft as someone who was just themselves, and it's like probably would not portray racism as the ultimate evil.
No. So, just to be clear, Lovecraft was a racist, sexist, bigoted piece of shit. But
how do you really feel? Because
but he created this world that
puppies. I don't know what the but is. He's a racist, sexist piece of shit. But it's like
yeah. So he created this world where a lot of other authors have set stories in. It's a sandbox world essentially that he invited other people to play in.
Sure.
And a lot of the people who are now playing in that sandbox, especially Black, Indigenous people of color, he definitely would not have approved of.
Well, Yeah, and Katie, that one article that you posted, one of them that I read talked about the fact that I think it was in 1975 they created an award for excellence in like fantasy work, and it was called the Love or the what's his first name?
Howard.
Howard. It was a Howard Award, but it was a bust of Howard Lovecraft, and so for Black authors that are writing stories that are winning this award, they're going to take the bust of this avowed racist into their homes. Just seems like an anathema to me. I mean, it's just, how could you do that? So
yeah, and it's a very prestigious award. Nettie Okafor, the first Black person to ever win it, said that it put her in real internal conflict. Quoting her, "A statuette of this racist man's head is in my home. A statuette of this racist man's head is one of my greatest honors as a writer."
Yeah.
I have to think from the setup of the show in the very beginning where he is, they talk about John Carter and other sci-fi stories, that part of this is Lovecraft being on trial. In a sense, it's sort of like Q in the first episode of Star Trek. His racism is going to be up front. This is his world, in a sense, the way he would want it, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I hope there's some level if he's judged for it. I'd like to throw out one of the things that Lovecraft is given credit for. Is a view, like a philosophy. It was called cosmicism. You know this, Katie?
I'm not so.
Well. So the idea of cosmicism, is sort of like pantheism, I think, except, and I'm just gonna read something. Humans are particularly insignificant in the larger scheme of intergalactic existence.
Yes, absolutely.
So Lovecraft, as far as I could, it's a very odd form of low self-esteem. But his monsters, and I believe his stories usually play out. It turns out the character that's viewing everything is insignificant compared to Cthulhu or Cthulhu.
Cthulhu.
Right.
Important things happening.
Right. Yeah. Essentially, a lot of Lovecraft's mythos is about, humans are essentially insignificant specks in this universe that is not even antagonistic to them. It's so, it doesn't even care. It's as though, humans are ants and, the old gods are, elephants or something like that. So and
it is interesting to me that somebody that could think up something like that still remains a racist. But,
it's like, I also get, like, he's got a really strong themes of fear of the other and the outside, and it's always something that's so strange and alien that our minds can't grasp it. But it's also like his xenophobia that is like at the core of that.
Well,
yeah, I really think that the whole cosmicism, that kind of stems out of his racism and fear of the other.
I think he wanted an order. I given this a lot of thought. I do think, in a sense, because he doesn't believe in a god, he's an atheist, but he still seems to think there's an order to the universe. So there are things out there that are more important than the white man, and the white man's more important than the women and the other races, right? And who are probably more important than animals.
there are also white people who are more important than other white people, the so-called degenerate families.
Yeah, he does not like hillbillies at all.
One of the nice note when I was kind of just rereading up on Lovecraft was that he never in his lifetime got welcomed into the elitist club. All his books were short stories and stuff were published in venues that he didn't necessarily approve of.
Well, I mean, that was the way for pretty much all science fiction and fantasy. It's not until recently that it's gotten any sort of critical acclaim.
It's just nice to know he was bothered to the end.
Well,
yeah, that is a good feeling.
Well, I mean, it's like, but back to my original question: do you think he would approve? Lovecraft would approve the show?
Oh,
the
no.
way everything's portrayed?
No.
Oh no.
No, because it shows the ugly face of racism, and it also features black people in heroic roles.
Yeah,
He
intelligent.
would have hated that. Yeah, that shows them as smart, heroic.
Well, I think he had that old traditional mentality that blacks weren't even really humans; they were,
Right.
subspecies. They're, So no, I don't think so in that sense. I'm curious, if there would have been two opinions that he might have had on it versus, his world versus the people that were in it.
Yeah.
I'd be curious whether he would approve of how they're doing the story versus who's the one in the actual story. But
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I read in one of the articles that you posted, Katie, was that Lovecraft saw Hitler as kind of a convenient fool, right? He was, doing the kinds of things, taking care of the Jewish question, right? But he saw him as a fool overall. And
yeah, I think the exact quote was, "He's a clown, but I really like the boy."
Right. Yes, that's it. And, as I read that, I'm thinking today about the racists that Trump is playing to, and how many of them see him as a fool, but they support him because he's allowing them to come out into the open and espouse their hateful viewpoints, right? And so it's, in a way, history repeating itself, I think. So it's sad to think that, a lot of that happened in the early 1940s, and here we are in the first part of the 21st century, and we're still fighting these same things.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I don't like Black Lives Matter is literally civil rights part. It's like we've done this before. I don't understand why we have to do it again, but apparently we do.
Well, I think that's part of why the show and why recognizing like this stuff about H.P. Lovecraft and other authors and our history, like this is our history. It's not we need to apply these same filters to Lovecraft, or that we realize about Lovecraft, and yes, he was a horrible asshole who was racist and sexist and just bigoted, but he created this thing that we all kind of love. But now, maybe take that to the founding fathers.
Right.
Yep.
It's like,
no, I agree, but it's a hard thing to.
It's a hard
upon
ask.
people. It's a hard thing to drudge up. Just because a lot of people either don't want to hear it, they don't want to see it, they don't want to believe that it's there, and so you get either significant pushback from the community when you try and drudge that up, or you get people that say it's not a thing. Racism doesn't exist. I don't see color BS.
I know, and at the same time, like we mentioned at the beginning, this was not that long ago.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of proud of HBO for bringing this all home. I mean, doing it with Lovecraft Country and Watchmen, where honestly, a lot of people for the first time learned about the Tulsa Massacre, and it's like
I've been hoping, because they mentioned Tulsa about the third episode. They just mentioned it because Atticus's father had survived the Tulsa Massacre, right? And I've been, this is just me being weird, I guess, but I am hoping that HBO doesn't that they have their own version, their own superhero, like the Marvel universe, that they have their own universe for all of these things, and they all start in Tulsa. Anyway, this is
Yeah.
The Tulsa Cinematic Universe?
the Tulsa.
That sounds. That doesn't sound
Sounds
fun
terrible.
at
Well,
all.
it doesn't sound happy, but it, you know,
Yeah.
because it's
Showing just like the rippling effects of that.
if you watch the.
Yeah.
It's well, because I know what I've been going through. Because I watched The Watchmen first, and so when Atticus's father, I think it's his father, sets that book on fire. That might be the 4th episode you haven't seen, Bill.
Oh.
But he pours. Some
No, I
whiskey,
saw the book set on fire, and he poured
Okay.
the. Yeah.
and then he goes, "It smells like Tulsa." You know, well, if you,
Yeah.
I could see not knowing what that meant, and then I can see knowing what that meant, and it's horrifying. You know.
I watched that, and the part where he says "smells like Tulsa," I didn't catch that, the significance of that until just now. I heard that. I of course knew about Tulsa, but when he said that, I'm like,
Well, I mean,
the hell
Tulsa
does that
kind of
mean?
sounds like that anyway. But
kind of went over my head. But now that you mention it, I'm like, oh, duh. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Well, awesome in its nastiest and sickest form. But yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, awesome in that they threw that
They
in. That
dropped
he made
in
that.
there, yeah.
Yeah, that he made that comment because it's like,
Just want
Yeah.
to clarify, and you're not supporting the Tulsa massacre.
no, in no way. Yeah.
In the context of the story, George and Montrose's family escaped the Tulsa massacre. Essentially, there's kind of a flashback in the book that talks about it. So that's how Tulsa ties into this story.
I was really sorry to see George die.
I was
I
too.
like George.
Yeah.
Liked him too.
Yeah, he was a great character, and I was like
Yeah.
in the first couple of episodes, the dad didn't seem great to me at all. I'm like,
Well, and to that point, there's a ongoing a little bit of mystery there over who really is Tick's father.
true, right.
So it does get, as you go through the storyline, it is revealed that there's kind of some uncertainty over whether George could potentially be Tick's father or.
Well, and I was wondering about that too, in the fact that they wanted Tick for his blood, right?
Yes,
Why wouldn't they want his dad?
right.
It's his mother,
Yeah.
his mother's bloodline.
Okay.
Mm,
All right, that makes sense.
I didn't get that. Yeah, but because I was kind of wondering that too. But then they did kidnap the father, or somehow
they
they
did.
got him, right? They had him at the house.
He was like his father was went to investigate and then disappeared.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they sent the letter to bring Tick there.
Okay.
But I
gotcha.
mean that's kind of Lovecraftian right there. The entire storyline of how he's drawn into this
Mhm.
is very reminiscent of a lot of Lovecraft stories of the hero losing contact with a relative and going to find them and finding the research that they've done or whatnot. Like that is a really strong just like reference to Lovecraft's stories and how he set up his tales of horror.
Yeah, no, I thought in episode 3, it was very interesting when that Christina Braithwaite, when she tries to go into the house that they bought and they exorcise the demons out of that house, and she just hits the threshold because there's the blood of a goat in the shape of a cross on the door frame. She just like hits a force field and bounces off of it, and she can't go in. And I'm like, that's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely some weird powers with that one. So
Kind of sad you haven't seen episode 4 yet, Bill.
yeah, I know. I had planned to watch it, and then we just got busy with stuff yesterday, and the day got away from me, so I didn't get a chance to. But it's on the schedule for tonight. It'll make a good Sunday night show. So
Yeah. Four was pretty good. Can't wait to see some more.
yeah.
No, I'm excited too.
And
It's
they're
actually
bringing-
a really good show.
I really do love the weekly episode release thing, because I like to have a week to think about what I've seen and maybe rewatch it or talk about it with people to see what their impressions were and stuff. And you know, you just don't get that when you get the bulk release of the season, because, you know, with everybody being separated, everybody has their own schedules to watch stuff, and it's hard to talk about something with somebody because they may be 5 episodes ahead, which of course is going to necessarily color their view of the previous episodes that maybe you're not that far along in. And so you want to talk about it, and then they can't because they know stuff that you don't know. So
the boys are getting review bombed hard because they're doing
because of that, right? Because
Yeah,
they didn't release the whole thing.
Yeah, and they're getting hit hard because they're spoiled. The fans are spoiled, and I kind of figured they would be spoiled, but you know, they'll get over it. But yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. It's, and I never did understand the whole dropping of the seasons all at once, because that doesn't seem like a good marketing ploy.
I think that was like it started with, and correct me if I'm wrong, that was something that started with Netflix.
Yes.
When Netflix started doing the things, they could just drop it all at once. It didn't matter, but that's what their audience wanted. Now that everyone else has adopted to it, I actually prefer the fact that they're going back to doing partial releases or whatever, because there's so much to watch.
right.
It's hard to kind of stop on episode 2 of 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
There's 4 other shows I kind of want to watch. I don't have to worry about binging it all. What I can do is I can spend an evening getting caught up on 3 or 4 shows,
Right.
and then I have a week to kind of digest all that, and then do it again the following week or whatever.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, you know, can I get through 15 episodes of this show before whenever?
Yeah, because when it all dumps at once, you feel that pressure to get through it before somebody spoils it for you.
Right.
And then you're done. It's like if there's a limited number of things you want to watch on Netflix, you're done with Netflix for a while. So I always wondered about the marketing strategy of dropping everything.
And CBS All Access is doing that, just a single show, you know, per week when they release a new series. So yeah, so I prefer that. I think it gives you a lot more chance to talk about stuff.
Well, for me, it brings me back to almost family time when I was younger, right? The family would get together, have dinner or whatever, and then that show of the week would come on every day. To me, that it seems to be, I feel more homely with them going on that schedule as opposed to what it used to be before. So
it gives you something to look forward to the week. It's almost like your weekly D&D game or whatever, you know. You look forward to, hey, it's coming. You know, I just got to hold out for Saturday night for the next episode, and
exactly it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to kind of bring us back to Lovecraft, to get some of these themes out of the episode, should we be reading some Lovecraft?
Trying. It's suddenly
Lovecraft is dense. If you do any reading now, you are you will see a definite difference in style. But
I know what I've just gone through this week. It's kind of, I've gone through this a lot in the last 4 years, but there's things that I've read or experienced in my youth because I was too young to understand them, and Lovecraft would be one of them. I couldn't tell you when I read Cthulhu, but I read it. You know, it's probably middle school, and I'm absolutely sure that any racist themes or what he named his cat or what none of that got into my head, right?
Yeah.
I would have read over it, and then having to come back and you're like, holy shit, this was raw, and I didn't make it through anything because it was a little much.
I've got a couple questions for Katie here. What Lovecraft would you recommend that people read to kind of get an idea of his writing and his stories and his racism, but still be able to appreciate as stories? And then you were also telling me about there are several new authors, or there are several authors in the field who are several authors you wanted to point out as newer in the field.
So, okay, so as far as stories that you can read to kind of, get an example of Lovecraft's writing, I think a really good one is The Call of Cthulhu. That it's a pretty famous short story. Does have themes of racism in there that you will be able to pick up on. But in general, that one's just a really good story. The Shadow over Innsmouth is another really good one. It deals more with ideas of bloodlines and the tainting of the good white race or whatever. So that one's a really good one and has a pretty good kind of twist ending. But if you really want to dig into the absolutely, racist,
despicable
his
stuff,
most racist stuff, I would suggest reading The Horror at Red Hook. Or alternatively, reading a review that someone has written of it so that you don't have to read it yourself.
Okay.
I read that one yesterday.
There's a really good review of it on Tor.com. A couple of the writers there have a Lovecraft reread series that I would highly recommend.
And what was that on, Katie, again?
Tor.com.
Tor?
Tor.com.
Okay.
This is kind of their blog page for the publishing company, but it's separate than the publishing company.
Gotcha.
It's separate from their main website, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So I would, if you are interested in diving into Lovecraft, that's probably a really good place to start. Is the H.P. Lovecraft reread.
Okay.
On Tor. And then as far
that.
we can put all of this in the show notes and everything like that. And then I wanted to talk about some authors who are writing right now. There's a lot of Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC authors who have kind of taken on, Lovecraft's world, and also just horror in general. So I wanted to kind of touch on some of those really good authors that I've come across. One of them is Victor LaValle. He has a novella called The Ballad of Black Tom, which is essentially a rewrite of The Horror at Red Hook from the perspective of one of the Black people there. And, it kind of twists the story, and it has a very satisfying ending.
Okay.
So that's that. I would also recommend Carmen Maria Machado. I think her kind of debut collection of short stories is called Her Body and Other Parties. I have not read it yet, but I have read other short stories of hers, and she is very good. Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Her newest novel is Mexican Gothic, which I have but have not read yet, and I know that it's already been picked up for, I can't remember if it's a movie or a TV series, awesome. But that is supposed to be very, very good. And she has actually edited a lot of anthologies and short story collections of, kind of in the Lovecraft mythos. And one of those was, She Walks in Shadows, which is a collection of short stories by female authors in the Lovecraft mythos, which I thought was really cool. Another one is Stephen Graham Jones. He is actually a Blackfeet Native American. He's written a lot of novels from kind of that perspective in the horror genre. Let's see, what's the good? I think, yeah, so the one that I have is Mapping the Interior. And then his newest one is called The Only Good Indians, which, you know, yeah, if you're familiar with the total phrase, you can kind of see where that's going. And there are definitely a lot of others. This is just kind of a surface level review. If you want to get into the larger horror genre, I would recommend Helen Oyemi. She is, oh gosh, I can't remember. She's actually from one of the countries in Africa. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but she actually lives in Britain and writes in the horror genre. The one that I've read of hers is called White is for Witching, which was very good. Let's see. Yeah, and I will go through and put together a whole list that we can add to the show notes.
Perfect.
But yeah,
Excellent.
I would highly recommend some of these contemporary authors.
So I just looked up most of those, and if you're into audiobooks, which I've been a lot lately, most of these looks like they also come in audiobook and not just paperback form as well. So that's really great to see.
That's cool.
I brought up Nidhi Okorafor earlier, the winner of that SFW award, and she is also an author to check out. Lately, she's been doing some comic books work in the Black Panther area around Shuri, but she also has several books in a series called Binti, which you can get the complete trilogy on Amazon, and it comes highly recommended. It's one that's on my list, but my list is like 400 books long now. There is no hope.
You need to be like that guy in the Twilight Zone where, you know, there's nuclear devastation and he's like the only one left, and he's at the library with thousands of books, and that's all he ever wanted to do was read. Now he's got plenty of time to read.
Well, I mean, we're in the right timeline and the right year for that. I just have to be the survivor.
Right. And make sure, unlike the guy in the Twilight Zone, that you don't break your reading glasses. That would be horrific.
In this case, it's like breaking my Kindle and never being able to charge it.
Yes.
Like,
There was time now. There was time. I had the time.
Right. Yep. All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you guys. This was a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to watching episode 4 tonight and for the rest of the season. It's really good, and you guys need to get on Raised by Wolves. You'll really like it.
I think we should once the first season of Lovecraft Country is over, we should get together and like do like a post-mortem on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Cool. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and hopefully you'll have access to watch Lovecraft Country. Again, it's streaming now on HBO Max. So, you know, pluck down your $15 and get a subscription. Maybe wait till it's all out, and then you can bulk load it, which we hate to do. Thank you all for watching another episode of the Galactic Driftwood podcast.
Remember to like and subscribe to us on your podcast of choice, or give us a comment over on YouTube. We are part of the Synergy Nation Network, so you can also check us out at synnation.net.
And, of course, you can watch this episode and all of our previous episodes, which are linked on our website, galacticdriftwood.space. So have a great couple of weeks, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Look out for Shoggoth.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Galactic Driftwood podcast. For more information and past episodes, please visit our website at galacticdriftwood.space or subscribe to us on YouTube. And now, please deactivate your cranial downlinks, collect your towels, and be sure to watch your step as you exit our gravity well.